All right, welcome back, and it's Good Morning Nigeria. If you've just joined in, you are on to the program live on the network service of the NTA, and it's time to talk a bit of business, and small businesses will continue to boom, of course, following cash into circulation. Of course, we'll bring you the details from our sports business desk, and here is Kunle Ade.
The cashless policy and Naira redesign nearly brought businesses to a halt. Consequently, people are compelled to settle for other means of business transaction. With the injection of more cash into circulation and weekend operations by deposit money banks, traders and buyers now say the situation is improving.
Saturday, Sunday, and today we see different because from Sunday, people used to buy things with cash. No more transfer, no more POS. They are using cash and buy their items.
With this money they release, I noticed that even the network is moving very fine. And everything, people are happy. So I prefer let there be a small cash and let's also continue in cashless.
I think this week, all this cash crisis, cash scarcity won't be the same again. It won't be the same again. There must be a change this week.
Everywhere now, there is a cash. If you want to buy something, there is a cash to buy it. I'm so happy.
They should just add it more so that especially people that are selling. We that are buying at times we can even do transfer and they will charge it on top of it. No, we don't mind. But these people that are selling things, some of them have closed their business because there's no money for them to get things. So that's it.
Those who are concerned are now calling on the Central Bank of Nigeria to sustain the injection of more Naira notes into circulation. With business news, I'm Kunle Ade.
All right, that was the business news package. Up next for us now is newspaper review.
All right, it's always a pleasure to welcome Chukwudi Okoli Ubaja to newspaper review segment. Chooks the boy.
And it's always a pleasure to sit beside Claire and Kingsley on a bright day like this. Ladies and gentlemen, I am happy to be here.
Chooks, morning and welcome.
Thank you, sir.
All right, yeah.
All right, let's begin with the Daily Sun. And the headline this morning says, more trouble for IU as court restrains PDP chairman from acting in office. Another writer from him says, my suspension exercise in futility, IU. And other stories here, suspected headsmen kill 5 in Benue communities. Details of that on page 4. And Fanny Kaade replies, UK envoy declares, I have no apology. Troops overpower Boko Haram in ex-army chief's hometown. And federal government moves to avert labor strike over Naira scarcity. Anyamo C-grade lecture. Ex-UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson seeks stronger Nigeria-Britain ties. And I respect Yoruba, can't disparage them, says Iwanyan. Polls, just below that, polls, police arrest 781 electoral offenders, recover 132 weapons nationwide, and Chief of Army Staff Lords personnel for professional conduct. Now, trending at the foot of the paper, INEC fixes April 15 for supplementary polls in Adamawa, Kebbi, and others. Details of that story on page 6. And of course, that's all I have from the Daily Sun's front page.
All right. We also have the leadership newspaper. Above the nameplate, 2 headlines. Pro-Tinubu groups protest interim government plot. 2023 polls. Police arrest 781 suspects, record 489 infractions. Police arrest 781 suspects, record 489 infractions. Naira scarcity persists as banks continue disbursement. Adamawa and Kebbi governorship candidates no fate April 15th. PDP crisis deepens. Confusion trails IU's suspension. That's on page 4, where you'll find the details, but the following riders also will be an indication of what you'll be reading inside. Court bars national chairman. Ward executives disown suspension letter. I will get injunction to vacate court order, IU vows. The war has just begun, says Wike. Global economy to fall to 30-year low. That's according to the World Bank. Media Complaints Commission for inauguration, April. Gunmen killed 3 civil defense officers in Igbo. Chukudi.
Oh, sorry about the fatalities you just mentioned. Gunmen kill 3 civil defense officials. Sorry about that. Senate presidency. I can sacrifice my ambition on religious consideration. That's coming from Sani Musa. Now, the gist of it is that probably because the president and the vice president-elect are of the Muslim faith, other high-ranking offices of the APC are likely to give way to, persons of other faiths. When you talk about other faiths in the country, you're inevitably talking about Islam and Christianity. Well, Sani Musa says the only consideration that will make him run for deputy Senate president is if a competent individual of the Christian faith decides to take up the presidency of the Senate. So he has a caveat there. Now, the reason I took this up is to again question the incidence of religious and ethnic considerations in deciding who takes up Nigeria's high political offices. I don't know why this is the case in our country. A friend of mine told me in Houston, Texas, that he didn't mind if the Kennedys decided to live forever in the White House. What mattered to him and other Americans was, is there good education, appropriate agricultural incentives, health facilities that work, and so on. But here in Nigeria, we seem to mind where the leader comes from and on what platform he serves God. He or she serves God, because one day, maybe a woman will become president in this country. British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak will not understand Nigerians as it were. He is Asian and of the Hindu religion. The largely Christian British public don't seem to mind. Now, to guard against the influence of tribe on national opportunity, Tanzanians don't write their names when they take the examination into secondary school. They write only their examination numbers. This I got reliably from a Voice of America staffer whom I trained their Nigerian reporters alongside just before the election started. And I said, really? Interesting. Okay, I don't know what you have to add to that, but let me quickly say that the PDP would seem to be in need of putting their house together. The impression we get here is that IU is experiencing more and more trouble. Okay? Court restrains IU from parading self as PDP national chair. The fight has just started, Wike. And when he says that, you want to ask, what does he know about it? You know? Then you are ignorant, illiterate. That's coming from IU and from the New Telegraph. Well, if he says they're illiterate, the neck of PDP seems to be on the side of these ward level performers, you know. And if Wike says the fight has just started, you want to ask again, what does he know about it all? So what is it with PDP? The first salvo came from Atiku Abubakar when he told Peter Obi, you didn't win. You took PDP votes. And we all said, what is this all about? We can't go beyond that because these gentlemen have their cases in court now. and we don't want to do anything that is sub judice. So, where do we go from here? You want to comment on what I have reeled out here, or you have something to shoot up there? Your silence is studied.
Well, I really don't have anything to say about that. It's just that it's a political matter. They will always tell you it's a family affair, so they know how to resolve their issues. Our only concern is that they should restrict it within the confines of political, rhetorics. So they shouldn't make it a public thing, a public affair involving other innocent citizens in their,
You're saying we will be more interested if they make our development the real family affair.
Yeah, exactly.
And not the intra-party.
And not the intra-party,
okay, that's the point.
Exactly.
Yes.
So,
well, yesterday I did say that this was like attempting to play the script that led ultimately to the removal of Adams Oshomole as APC chair. His ward in Etsako said they had suspended him, and that's how the whole trouble started. The matter is already in court, and an interim injunction has been granted. One concern that I have not seen the certified true copy of that interim order. But from the reports that I have read, just some curiosity about it, because his lordship was said to have, it was an ex parte order, by the way, and so in 7 days, of course, you get to hear the other party, and I'm sure, I think it's been adjourned till about April something. The dates are
April 15 or thereabouts.
Yes, thereabouts.
Yes.
The order was said to have been founded on the claim that Ayu, having lost his membership of the party, he should now step aside as chairman of the party, having lost his membership.
I found that curious.
I just said to myself, does suspension amount to loss of membership?
Shouldn't there be a substantive, case?
No, that's not. I'm just saying.
I'm asking for procedural.
Just
from you now.
Well, it's ex parte. You will now hear the other party, but it is the interim order that is being quoted in the accounts that I read, that his lordship was said to have held that Ayu, having lost his membership following the decision of the ward executive. And my question is, does suspension of a party member amount to loss of membership?
That's the point.
Suspension is not expulsion. And so these are some of the things that the matter is subject to, and I've made this comment now with the most tremendous respect to his lordship. Now, when Wike says that the war has just begun, where are you fighting this war? You're fighting the war in the courts of law, or where? And we should also always be careful. Let's always be careful. There was a time in this country almost 30 years ago when the judiciary was being scandalized by all kinds of litigants and interested parties and uninterested parties engaging in forum shopping. What we call forum shopping, you go from one location to another looking for injunction, counter-injunction, and so on. The military regime at the time used it as part of the rationalization to say that the judiciary had been brought into ridicule and disrepute.
The process of court.
Through all kinds of things. So what are all these issues? And you find plight. We've discussed it on Good Morning Nigeria. And sometimes some members of the judiciary tend to lend themselves to some of these processes. Of course, it is what comes to you that you deal with. And so on and so forth. But all they say war. I think Nigerians are more interested in substantive issues rather than some of these intra-party shenanigans. There are ways, it's simple. There are ways. You can't say you want to pluck down a chairman. The ward doesn't appoint a chairman. And the constitution of the party ordinarily should be supreme. So I'm sure probably these are some of the things that the political parties will continue to do until they implode. When they implode, then there will be greater clarity as to how exactly you manage political parties. all of these are the same political parties. We had the election, and we were talking about this earlier. What was the percentage turnout of voters in the course of the election? And you, a political party, what is your membership strength? How many of your members were you able to mobilize to go out to vote on the 25th of February? How many of them were you able to go out to mobilize to vote on the 18th of March when you had the governorship and state house of election? You have no control over your members. You are busy fighting over the top. It's a headache, but sometimes you don't drag people into some of these issues, and there are better issues to deal with than some of these inter-party shenanigans.
I want to ask you, please. I'm not talking in relation to this RU matter, please, because the matter is in court. It's under judge. But I want to ask a general question. Can the NJC step into what is seen by some people as frivolous injunctions coming from the courts? Can they do that?
Well, the NJC has reprimanded judges in the past.
Yes.
And some judges have also been disciplined on account of some of the injunctions that they have given. Where, of course, there you have clear decisions coming up from higher courts against the subject matter of such an injunction.
Okay.
So we've had that. But this is an ex parte order, as we said. So we'll see how it goes. But it's just using the concern is using the courtroom as a playground for your political football and so on and so forth. Luckily, the Super Eagles managed a penalty score yesterday.
I don't know whether that makes me happy, because I'm thinking if they succeed at this stage, can they face Senegal, Morocco, Ghana?
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't matter.
Forever,
and I think
forever an optimist.
No, it doesn't matter. Yes, and like I always say, the Nigerian Super Eagles, our history is that we are always better at the away matches. I mean, you can verify.
Claire, if you are going to break my heart, better break it early in the day.
I was just wondering. There's a headline. There is a headline here. It says, "Media Complaints Commission for inauguration in April." This is like an ombudsman for the media industry. You have the details on page 6, but is commission the right word to use in our environment? Because commissions are usually statutory bodies. Which law is setting up this commission?
Oh, good.
All right.
So I think that's that. Then second point, I'd just like to make this, and of course, I hand over to you guys. Today is the 28th of March. We know that 1 year ago today, there was a terrorist attack on that train service from Kaduna from Abuja to Kaduna. A horrific incident that lasted, of course, for several months on account of persons who were kidnapped. There were at least no fewer than 8 persons who died in that incident. Most of them, one of the victims, of course, was the General Secretary of the Trade Union Congress. He was traveling with his wife. The wife survived, but he took a shot in the head. We, of course, continue to commiserate with those who lost their loved ones, and more particularly to praise the officers of the Nigerian military who responded. Because it was said that within an hour, because Mohammed Ali, the Deputy Director of News of NTA, was here with us when we were reviewing the incident, within an hour of that attack, they came on and then, of course, dislodged the terrorists who unfortunately had gone away with some of those persons, and took some of these victims on their backs, and then, of course, shepherded them to the 44th Reference Hospital in Kaduna. So pretty sad incident, but 1 year ago today, that's when it happened.
Great recall. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Chukwudi, thank you. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you, Kingsley. Thank you, Director.
All right, so stay with us. We'll be right back with our conversation on, of course, managing post 2023 general elections, and, of course, looking into the hope-renewed agenda of the President-elect. All right, welcome back, and thank you for staying with us. We will now, of course, begin our conversation on managing post-2023 elections. Okay, let me quickly begin with the guest introductions. And, of course, we have right here in the studio Ayobami Oyalowo, who is a development economist, is right here with us. Ayo, good to see you again.
Good morning. Good to see you again.
All right, and Lagos studio, from Lagos studio, we have joined us Bola Olojede. He's a public policy analyst. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, gentlemen, once again, welcome you to this edition of Good Morning Nigeria. Let's begin the conversation from our Lagos studios where Bola was introduced a moment ago. Bola Olojede, well, tell us, today is the 28th of March, so we have, as it were, 2 months to the inauguration of the president-elect. And as the saying goes, once the sun rises and it sets, that's one day gone, and before we know it, May 29th will be upon us. But there's still a lot in the air in terms of claims and counter-claims and all kinds of suggestions, and many would say distractions in terms of saying, oh, let's have an interim government. Oh, it didn't quite win this election fair and square. How do we begin to clear the clutter and focus on what is ahead?
Well, I believe the way to go in curing whatever complaints and grievances are normal. People could feel aggrieved, and like they say, you cannot beat a child and ask him not to cry. But the right approach is to channel grievances in the right direction, which is why I'm delighted that the litigations, the matters of the grievances are now before the competent court and the judicial system to take care of these grievances. The world is not going to wait for us. Every day, the day breaks, and then there is a night comes, and the day passes by. So we have to start working and making things happen for the ordinary citizen of Nigeria, even as we leave the resolution of grievances to the judicial system to tackle.
Okay, thank you very much, Bola Olojede, for your opening remarks. And let's come back here, to our Abuja studio. We have Ayobami Oyalo. I like to borrow a phrase from, a veteran, columnist, Lasisi Lagunju, and he captured, my thoughts when he said, the Ides of March are come but are not gone, meaning that elections have come, but of course not yet, settled. There were issues that emanated from the elections, and when we talk about that, we seem to, concentrate majorly on the negative aspects of, fallouts, but understandably so. What, in your opinion, for you, were the major fallouts of this election?
Thank you very much. The first thing I think this election did is that it's the most competitive we've had since the return to democracy in 1999. And how did I say that? Or why did I say that? You find out that almost all the contestants had the same winning numbers in states, as in the winner won 12 states, the first runner of that person who came second had 12 states too, while the person who came third had 11 states plus Abuja, and then only Kwankwaso had just one state, that's Kano, that's NNPP. So it's really competitive, but what also distinguished the winner from the others is the fact that he was able to make at least 25% in about 29 or 30 states thereabout, which means he had more numbers and the spread is good. You look at, he won 4 states in the southwest, 3 in the south-south, 4 in the north-central, and then 1 in the northwest, or northeast rather, then another 3 in the northwest. So His spread is what differentiates him from the other people, but it is quite competitive, like I said. And then I think because of the noise that we are hearing about from the losers, oh, we won't agree, people actually lost some good things that happened from this election. And what did I mean by that? Normally, you could sit down, write results if you wish to. But with the beavers that will tell you the number of people who were accredited, you really can't sit down and do what was done in 2007, where you can have, I think then we had, the winner had 28 million votes. Now you have a winner with 8.7 million votes. So which means you can gauge the numbers of people who actually voted without unnecessarily padding the number like it was done before. So the lot of fallouts that INEC actually was able to take more control of the situation by ensuring that you don't have overvoting like we used to have before. And then the competitiveness of the election means whoever wins cannot sit on his oars. You have to deliver, because it is clear that the electorate now call the shots. So you can't take them for granted anymore. So a lot of positives actually came out of this election. It's unfortunate that we have been able to cover up the good things away from the noise of, oh, we will not agree, oh, we have been cheated. So it's making us to actually lose focus from the positives, which I think is huge. Because right now, whoever sits in that office, and not just the president, anywhere now, whether you're a governor or whatever, it is clear that you can be changed at any time. We saw governors who had spent 2 terms who couldn't come back as senators, which used to be the plan before. I think about 7 governors wanted to come as senators. Almost all of them lost their seats. The opportunity to become senators. So it is clear that the electorate now call the shot. And it tells whoever sits in any office in Nigeria, you can't take it for granted, because the electorate will judge you in another 4 years.
Well, allied to what you have said, Ayo, is the fact that when you look at the population of those who voted for other candidates, first runner-up, second runner-up, and third runner-up, when you do the math, it's almost about 13 million or so. And as you have said, these are persons in aggregate who are on the other side. The president-elect is on one side, and so the president-elect cannot take anybody for granted. But we know that elections are also an emotive issue. And 2023 saw huge investments of emotion in the process. As economists will say, or financial experts, they've made losses, as it were. I'm trying to look for a way to state it without hurting more feelings. They lost their bets, as it were.
Okay.
Yeah, they lost their bets.
They hedged their bet and lost it.
Yes, they hedged their bets and then they lost it. But some would say they were not gambling, and that it was a conscientious and conscious effort to say this is who we wanted to vote for. And we placed our hopes in him, and unfortunately, our candidates lost. How do you begin to assuage such persons and others who, of course, could not have voted for the president-elect? But majority, of course, is the in thing in terms of democracy.
Yeah.
So if the majority had said that this is our winner, and it's so clear by at least about 2 million votes, he takes the seat. But how then do you assuage this person? Because yes, they belong in the population, and once we're getting into the economic issues, you will still need them to carry on with your economic policies, to galvanize them as part of the civil population for you to achieve your economic, political, and social ends.
Well, if you remember, one of the first things the president-elect did was to give a speech and he extended a hand of fellowship to everyone. And also he had made it clear that, look, I have won the election, but let's move forward, because clearly, like you rightly said, a lot of people didn't vote for him, and they are also part of Nigeria. Whether you like it or not, they are citizens, their interests must be catered for. So what I think he has done, which is the good thing, is to bring everybody in. The other thing that I think will be done, which he cannot do yet because he's not yet president, is to hit the ground and start running. If people begin to see performance, clearly, if I choose you instead of her or her instead of you, it's because maybe there's something I see in you that I didn't see in her. However, if I begin to get a result, eventually people begin to calm down. Okay, he's not who I wanted, but he's delivering. So I think he has been magnanimous in his speeches, even when you think otherwise. He had been very, very acceptable and open to everyone. So for me, when he becomes president, I mean, when he's sworn in, because he's the president-elect, when he's sworn in, the few things I think he needs to do is to quickly look at quick wins. What are those things that people are looking forward to in terms of the economy, in terms of agriculture, in terms of security? Even though we have international and local challenges that might affect us. I mean, I've been reading as an economist, I've been reading what's going on in America, especially with the banking industry, and there's a big chance that it's going to affect us, just the way the Ukraine-Russia war is affecting the world. I think whatever is going to happen in America in the next couple of days is going to affect the world. So he needs to start thinking what are his counter moves to cushion that effect in Nigeria, because we remember when the subprime disaster happened in around 2008, the whole world felt it, and now it's going to happen again because the banking system in America has been messed up. And he needs to look at, okay, this is Nigeria, what do we do to form a buffer? So if these things begins to happen and Nigerians begin to get some form of dividend of democracy, I think he will be able to win in others, and then they will realize that, look, we didn't vote for this guy, but he's doing well. And on the long run, what we all want is a country that works. If the country begins to work, automatically it is no longer about who I wanted in power. It's about the fact that my dreams are being met, my needs are being met, and my expectations are being met. And if that begins to happen, then you must really be, I'm trying to be very careful, you must really be terrible in your anger for you to now say, okay, we still don't want it. But if it works, most reasonable people will say, okay, we didn't want him, but he's doing well, so let's give him more chances. And that chance is in another 4 years, then you can then come back and either select him again or look for someone or some other alternative. So his acceptance, his speeches have been magnanimous, but his action when he hits the ground running will determine how well people will move on from the electoral losses, or how they will think they were justified in not supporting him.
All right, but Balao, I'm sure you're with us in this conversation. You listen to what Ayo here, said about assuaging, those aggrieved in post-election. But my question will be for you to gauge the level of violence, that emanated from the 2023 general elections. From data available to us, we understand it's probably the lowest or the least that we ever recorded in the history of our general elections. What are your perspectives to this?
Well, I believe that is actually one of the gains of this particular election. Because of the negative feelings, we have more or less suppressed all the gains that were made in this election. And one of those gains is that in spite of the fact that there was violence, this violence were the least we have seen in this Fourth Republic. If you look at the number of death figures alone, some people reported 13, 28. I think the largest figure I probably saw was about 28. That is 28 too many Nigerians. Even if it is one Nigerian that died, it's one Nigeria too many. So 28 is a whole lot of lives to have lost. But when you situate it beside previous figures, even all the way from 1964, thereabout, you start to see 150, 120, 100. And when you now put it as a relative matter, then you begin to see that it was actually the least violent that we have seen, despite the fact that there was violence and lives were lost in this particular election.
Still on that, again, the states we have, the hotspot states we have, surprisingly, not the traditionally known, areas for violence during elections. In fact, I was amazed to see the River State is out, of the hotspots area that were recorded in 2023 elections. And those states, for instance, Lagos, Imo, Kano, Osun, Bauchi, and Cross River. Is there anything that was, I'm trying to get the right word now. Is there anything specific that triggered, or made these states vulnerable to violence during this election?
It is probably the level of competition and the power dynamics in those particular states. Whether you pick Lagos or you look at a Kano or an Imo, there are certain peculiar power dynamics in those states, and might have accounted for how sensitive or how violence was a little bit more, the hotspot states, like you call them, why these states were hotspot. If you look at most part of northern Nigeria, for example, things were relatively calm in most part of northern Nigeria. Even in eastern Nigeria, apart from Imo. So the level of violence, when you look at it comprehensively across the length and breadth of Nigeria, it was less, much less in this election than what we have had in the previous period. Most of the focus of grievances are not exactly about violence. There are issues of voter intimidation in some places and all the rest. But as far as violence, the number of deaths is concerned, it is much less in this particular election.
Well, Bolaho, thanks, but I'm sure you are aware of the views that have also been expressed by way of a question. Must people die for candidates to be elected? Whatever election, local council election, state house of assembly, governorship, national assembly, or presidential.
Unfortunate situation that we have found ourselves. And just like this has been a bit of an improvement relative to previous years, the room for improvement is still huge. Nobody should have to die for somebody to win an election. Nobody should have. There are bigger democracies across the world, and they run elections, and there are no issues of the number of deaths that we receive in Nigeria. So issues of security around election, issues of violence around elections are things that we can still do a lot more about, including how to, in America, for example, you have what you call early elections, in which some people will even have voted before voting takes place, before the election date. So there are several things we can still do to reduce the level of violence, and emphasis on subsequent elections should be around that. I was delighted in one of the off-cycle elections, the Guba election in Osun, for example, there was no single report of violence. So I was even thinking, we can cut over what we had in Osun to a general election. But of course, managing one election in one state is a totally different ball game from managing 3 elections in 36 plus 1 constituencies. It's a much bigger election that we're looking at. However, if we could have gotten there in Osun at some point, I believe that we will also get there across Nigeria in the future.
In terms of healing, Ayo, you talked earlier about part of what the president-elect could do once he's sworn in. In other words, be cognizant of occurrences around the world, also be cognizant of the national circumstance, and hit the ground running. And once people begin to see performance, then that switches their mindset from, I didn't vote for you, to, my concern should be is our well-being and welfare being accounted for in your administration. Fine points that you have raised. But very quickly, before we get into the nitty-gritty of those things that need to be done, part of the concerns of a number of observers has to do with the emphasis, some would say the aggravation of the nation's fault lines, religion and ethnicity. How do we also deal with that? Economics doesn't quite address those issues.
Yeah, I actually, I'm so grateful you asked this question, because when you were talking, that came to my mind. The religious aspect. I don't know how we found ourselves here, but we cannot pretend that we are ethnic people. We are different. You have Yorubas, you have Ijaw, you have Hausa, you have Igbos, you have Edo, you have all manner of different. But growing up, even though we know we are different, I remember the first national anthem I sang was, though tribe and tongue may differ, in brotherhood we stand. We know we have these differences. But when politicians begin to deliberately exploit such fault lines, it becomes dangerous. I remember one of the candidates went to church and he was saying, "Church, take back your country." And I asked myself, from who? So these are the problems. When politicians irresponsibly make this kind of dangerous statement, it have a conscious way of staying in the mind of the people. And I also follow the event. I think we need to make some ground rules going forward about things that should be done and shouldn't be done. I know a lot of religious houses got involved, and even after the election, some were still saying, no, we will not accept, this is not what God showed us. All manner of dangerous rhetorics being thrown there, such that the election became a religious election. And we know these fault lines are there. But seriously, anybody who think he wants to rule or govern Nigeria should not exploit these fault lines. The reason is this: whether you win or lose, the things that has been said before election always have a long-term effect on the people, because you have deliberately exploited those fault lines. You have opened up what you will call old wounds, said things that shouldn't be said. And when this happens, after the election, it's always difficult for people to come back from that. And that is why I thought the church before, because I'm a Christian, I will talk from my own aspect of faith as a Christian. I thought the church should always pray like we were taught, that pray for Jerusalem, for whoever seek its peace shall be in peace. And then it's also say pray for the kings, whichever power is by God. And for me, I thought that is what we should be taught. But today, I see all manner of things, and it's worrisome. So I think religious leaders need to be more cautious about the things they say and do, because they are the strongest influencers. You know how you want to say it. They have huge influence on their followers. And if religious leaders throw caution to the wind, it becomes dangerous, because it is only a religious leader that can tell people go kill somebody, and you see people go and kill in the name of God. So religious leaders must understand the power that they wield over their followers, and must learn to be cautious, because if we decide to make all these dangerous rhetorics and then it comes back to haunt us, when the bubble bursts, hopefully we will not get to that point, God's willing. But if we decide to push ourselves into this, I always say it, you only know when you start a war. Nobody knows how it's going to end. So we must be very careful. So religious leaders must be very careful. I'm a Christian, so I will always talk from my own aspect of faith. Like I said, I believe that even if you don't accept the faith of the other person, since God has brought us together, it is clear that we don't have a choice. God created us. I didn't choose to be in Nigeria. I was born that way. So it means that is what God wants for me. And if we believe this is what God wants for us, our books, the Christian have the Bible, the Muslim have the Quran, must have taught you about how to cohabit in peace with people. Mm-hmm. And I tell some of my Christian friends that if you are truly a Christian, you will realize that it doesn't matter the religion of your leader. The Bible has taught us to be able to respect our leaders and understand that God put them there. And I give them an example that look at in the book of Isaiah 45. There is a king called Darius. He wasn't a Jewish king, but God called him my anointed. And that I'm going to send him, I will anoint him, and I will use him for my people. So people got too emotional and forgot some aspect of our religious teaching. And then we throw this out, and then we are now complaining that there is problem. It is because of the problem we created with our mouth. So I want to use this opportunity to beg our religious leaders to understand that we were all born without choosing where we want to be. So if God has put us here together, your job as our leaders, especially religious leader, is to teach that love. Unfortunately, we all fall into the same period now. The Muslims are fasting, the Christians are fasting. So the essence of these things should be taught, because this religious right were created so that we can learn love, learn respect, learn humility. If all these things are taught properly, we will understand that it doesn't matter whether you are a Christian, it doesn't matter if you are a Muslim. We always forget that we have other religions in Nigeria. Okay. We always underestimate these people. We have people who are not Christian, who are not Muslims. They also have a right. So we have to respect everybody's right, irrespective of their faith. Or lack of it.
Thank you. Again, we return to our Lagos studio. Balaho, again, thank you for your earlier response and the points that you made about peculiar power dynamics. And I want to believe it was the peculiar power dynamics that also inflagrated the inter-ethnic animosity that that erupted in Lagos, for instance. Lagos used to be a very, peaceful, accommodating, and that's why, of course, it's called a cosmopolitan, city. Now that the elections have been, won, and losers, those who lost know their status, and those who have taken the issue, their matters to the court of law, they've taken the legal means. How do we then begin to get us back together? The powers, the peculiar powers have done their own. They have gotten their, the outcome of the elections. But the people, there seem to be an eerie quiet in Lagos. How do we begin to, what are the basic steps now that our leaders need to take to bring us back together?
Yes, this will involve leadership at all levels, from the parents at home to religious leaders, traditional leaders, and everywhere where people exercise some sort of influence or the other, or the other over people, to bring it back to our awareness that we are not enemies. We've lived together forever, we've intermarried, we are neighbors, we work together. And whatever politics and the search for votes might have brought into our midst is for that moment, and it is over. And I'm delighted that some discussions are already going on in this direction. I've seen a couple of online videos about engagement, post-election engagement, that are trying to address this. We must expand those kind of engagement to put people's mind at rest. That look carefully at this matter, and you will see that you and I, from different ethnicities, are not at war. In fact, if you look closely at the voters, the voter groups, you will see that there are, I will use the Yorubas and the Igbos, for example. A good number of Yorubas are obedient. And they not only voted for Peter Obi, they have remained in that caste. That is who they represent. So, but when politicians pitch people against people, this is not part of their own consideration. But what has happened has happened. Let's begin to heal that process. Another important part of healing, which some people will disagree with me, is actually that litigation in Nigeria will help part of this healing process, both at the center and at the states where there are issues. You see, what litigation helps to do is to focus issues on evidences. And evidences go beyond, oh, I read this on social media. We have situations, for example, in which a gentleman was said to sit in Bayelsa, it's not even a Lagos residence, while he was busy on Twitter stoking some embers of discord, setting people against one another. The guy was neither here nor there. He was far away from, but that's what he was doing. Now, in the course of litigations, some of those social media pranks and schemes and attempt at setting people against one another will be debunked. Issues of I was cheated, my results were changed, all those ones will also bring, there will be evidences on the table that will be examined in determining whether to go to the left or to go to the right, and if there are corrections to be made, to go ahead and make those corrections. At the same time, if you look at the center, for example, some of the issues that the APDP and Labour Party are brought to the court are issues about whether a candidate is even qualified to have contested in the first instance, and as well as issues of whether 25% in Abuja is required. All those matters, all those grievances associated with those issues will not be settled outside of the court system. So the court system is in itself an integral part of the healing process, and we should allow it to take its course up until the very end.
Okay, thanks a lot, Bolahon, for your elucidation of the facts. We know that we're not getting into the matters that are already been litigated. We're looking at the social environment. We're also looking at other issues that are relevant. Just one point, again, before we take a deep dive into the economic issues. One of the observations in the course of the 2023 elections had to do with sometimes the unrestrained and unprofessional manner in which spokespersons of the various political parties were just plying their trade. You had a lot of hate speech, a lot of just plain communication irresponsibility. There is still a filtration of that in the post-election process. Who will restrain these attack dogs?
That's why I said we need to have a grand norm. I mentioned that earlier on. It's not just the spokespeople, supporters, and unfortunately, I must add this, a lot of private media houses were also irresponsible in the way they disseminated information. You really can't differentiate media houses today from the irresponsibility going on in the social media. You see people who are supposed to shape opinions, who are supposed to be unbiased, sit in their studios and begin to talk as if they are on Twitter or Facebook. And these are the worrying signs. And at times, I know the NBC had fined a few of them to 2 million, but I think it should go beyond 2 million fines. Honestly, I always say I fear when the media loses its cloak of being the fourth estate of the realm, because fortunately both of you you will understand this better than even myself. In 1994, whatever happened in Rwanda happened because of irresponsibility of the media, and it consumed the lives of about 2 million Rwandese. So it tells us clearly that the media should truly be the fourth estate of the realm, not just an irresponsible and biased dog that jumps into the fray. We have that problem in Nigeria, and until that is sorted, we will keep having this problem. You find out that media houses keep inviting people who really shouldn't be seen in public for any reason to come in and spew hate speeches, and then these things are continually streamed on social media, making people angrier and more angry. People that are already angry, you keep bringing things to make them more angry. I see some things and I wonder, where did we get it wrong as a country to come to this level? We can have different political views, but for heaven's sake, we cannot destroy our country because of political views. Because elections are something that happen within 2 weeks, presidential to the governorship. But our lives after election is always 4 years after them. So if you have caused such grievous and dangerous divide because of the election, who goes around to heal the land? That is why you find out that even after election, this has continued, because some of the hate speeches have not been removed from the... So yes, media houses need to do their job. Spokesmen need to do their job too. You find out that people don't bother to do researches. People don't bring facts. People just throw their opinions and make it look like it's a fact. And then so many other people don't bother to search. You find out that today we are in a society or in a world where we have a lot of information, unlike we used to have before. I keep remembering when I was in the university, we had an assignment. We couldn't find the book. We had to pay gather money and pay one of us to travel to Ibadan to go get the book from UI so that we can do the assignment and then return the book after we've all made photocopies of relevant pages. So unfortunately today, it's better. You don't need to do that. You can go on the internet, you can use your Google, whatever you want to do. But despite the abundance and preponderance of information, people don't bother to read. People just throw unnecessary speeches everywhere. So this is where there's a problem. I don't know who is in charge of making the laws, but there should be tighter laws about what people can say in public and what people cannot say in public. I'm always happy whenever I come here because even from your body language, one knows that there are some things you can't say here. But if you go to some studios, it's a free-for-all. People, even the interviewer is already so biased that he's putting you on the defensive before you even start talking. So it's a challenge. There must be better training. You are laughing, but the truth is journalists are no longer journalists. They have now become arms of whatever political party they represent. Because clearly you will see it from their body language. So that if you go in the studio, you already know that you are going to fight not the issues, but the man who is supposed to be interviewing or the woman who is supposed to be interviewing you. And this, for me, are the risks that we have if we don't think and begin to behave properly. I think we are America, but we are not. America is a different country. And I will use the example of, a Republican will never go into a Democrat, to CNN studio, while the other person, the Democrat will never go to Fox Studios. Because those people are too partisan. And that is what Nigeria is trying to build. And I think it's wrong. Because we are not like them. Honestly, we must get to the point where all media houses are largely seen as unbiased. So that people can be comfortable and go in there, speak with fact. And if you are lying in the studios, I think there should be a way to fact check your lies. This we just said is a lie. So that people will be careful about the things they put out there, and then they don't help to exacerbate whatever problem we're already trying to deal with.
All right, thank you, Ayo.
I really want to weigh in there. When Ayobami was speaking about going to get a book for research purposes for the assignment in the university,
I saw you laugh.
I was chuckling because that's the system that we also went through. We didn't have to go to another university to borrow books, but there was always a risk. In those days, you probably will have just 1 or 2 copies of the book. Yeah. And some students,
they would take the page.
Some of them will either rip the page.
They rip off the page. Yeah.
Alternatively, they will take a book from, say, the social sciences, and then go to the shelf in engineering and lock it there because
so they don't know who have access to it.
Others will not have access to
exactly.
It. So that it keeps going there because you're supposed, if you were to borrow a book, you will borrow for about a month, 4 weeks.
My generation came after you, so I understand exactly that. So you are looking for a particular book, you can't find
you won't find
only one man knows where the book is.
At the end of the day, what will the person score? So the information age is a complete turnaround.
It's a turnaround,
and it's amazing, Claire. On our phones here, we get into our researches, and you have an assignment, you get it done. Of course, the thing is that there's a filtration process. I just thought we should throw this in as part of the experience. Yes.
Thank you, Kingsley, as always. And Gbala Olojede, I'm sure you also appreciate the input made by Kingsley. I hope you heard us here. But again, let's look at, what Ayo here, talked about, the role of the media. And by media now, I'm sure he also means not just the social media. He also means traditional, your main media. Some time ago, there was an attempt to really sanitize the social media because all that we are saying, maybe few traditional media are culpable, but the social media is the center, or as it says now, it's the jungle. So should we be looking towards, again, the area of, contemplating how to bring sanity to the social media, to bring sanity to, the way we broadcast, election content or campaign content. That's one. Then secondly, what programs do you think, state executives now, or those who won their elections in their respective areas, can begin to initiate, for inclusiveness, so that we begin to have a focused identity, you know, in the forthcoming dispensation.
Okay, thank you very much. On the first issue of regulating the social media space, what we are seeing with the social media in Nigeria is actually not peculiar to Nigeria. It's a global problem. As we are contemplating the issue of regulation here, it is being contemplated in America, it is being contemplated in Europe, it is being contemplated in Asia. So there is a general concern about how this regulation should be done. And there's not been many conclusions across various jurisdictions globally. So it is something we must continue to watch and see how we don't have to wait for them. That is the reality. If we find something that we can agree on, because where your right stops is where mine begins. There is freedom to go around. But if you jump into my compound, you have trespassed. So there has to be limits, and there has to be levels of responsibility associated with every right. How we design our regulation to work on that very delicate edge without necessarily impinging on issues of rights is what is going to define how we will benefit from regulating the social media. But there is no doubt, like I said, that there must be some form of control. And we are not alone in this consideration. It is being considered across the globe on what to do to limit the excesses and the violence and the lies and the misrepresentation that has typified a whole lot of sources on the social media. Then the second question was what the governors can begin to do, or winners of elections can begin to do to heal the society. I will even take that from the previous question. The principles of spokespersons must rein in their spokespersons in a way. If you have won an election, then the tone needs to change. You are not fighting. You can't continue along that same level of aggression. It is not a fight. So the tone of the spokesperson must also start to adopt conciliatory approach to matters. Because you need everybody's involvement. You need to carry them along in whatever you intend to do as well. So these governors, number one, can start, or president, or whoever has won an election, can start with their spokesperson. The nature of what their spokesperson put out there has to be conciliatory. It has to be reaching out. Then engagement. You see, politicians, after all, are not enemies of themselves. If anybody thinks today that maybe Asiwaju, Tinubu, and Atiku are enemies, you're probably deceiving yourself, or that Peter Obi is an enemy of either of those. No. Politicians in themselves are not enemies of themselves. And engagement at political levels could go on. So reaching out even at the political level by the politicians themselves is something that they should continue to do. At the same time, people are willing to listen to issues that shows them hope. That this guy that has won, this is the direction in which he intends to go, as far as security is concerned, as far as the economy is concerned, and they want to hear you. They want to see and hear those things that ministers to their concern. So the engagement that these winners need to be having today or going forward should be along the line of conciliation, as well as what I will be bringing to the table having won the election now. This will help as part of the healing process that we're talking about.
All right, Balahon, thanks a lot for also weighing in on the issues relating to how to better communicate with the respective publics in our environment post-election. I think that's a very critical intervention that you have made there. We'd like to also welcome Barrister Ismail Ahmed, is currently the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Special Interventions, and he was Secretary of the Policy, Research and Strategy Committee of the APC Presidential Campaign Council. Ismail Ahmed is a familiar face. We're glad to have you on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. So, but as well just begin from the last point that the two other guests were touching on, namely part of the healing process that we need to engage in. May 29th is around the corner, 2 months. Tomorrow will be May 29th, 2 months smack on. And the days will just come, the nights will come, and we are right there. But people have been hurt by the bruising nature of the campaigns, and some would say the electioneering. Some of those issues the other guests have already dealt with. What is the reach out that is required at this time? That, yes, we've had a fight like two boxers or two wrestlers. I mean, it's no boxer takes his fight outside of the ring. If he does that, of course, he goes to jail. What is it that is needed to be done at this time to pull everyone together and say, yes, there are grievances, the courts are available for you to solve your grievances, but we have a nation and we have to keep going.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I think from the last point that the last speaker mentioned,
yes.
I think it's very important that we realize or we acknowledge the kind of situation we're in. Politics or elections generally in this country are deeply emotional. They are highly emotional activities, and people get emotionally involved in these things, and it's because of the nature of governments or rather elections or democracy in Africa or in Nigeria in particular, where 70 to 80% of economic activities is being done or is being coordinated or is being superintended or is being driven by government. So a lot of people who are citizens of this country believe that whoever wins an election, has a direct correlation to the way they live their lives. How he prays, who he talks to, the kind of person he looks like, what language he speaks. Our fault lines come out easily. What we have tried to do over the years is to overcome these fault lines. But unfortunately, I think this last election, some of these fault lines became a bit too apparent, and too pronounced during the electioneering campaign. And therefore, a lot of people were emotionally invested in it, and you could see that there were raw feelings that were involved. What happens after that is that the moment after the elections, people felt deeply hurt. So to them, it was not just an election that was won or lost. To some people who are probably newcomers in this, I and Ayo could look at it and say, hey, we've lost an election, we're party people, and we could feel hurt and disappointed, but we know that, this country has got to go on. I've been in opposition for 16 years. The first 16 years of my political career started in opposition. Exactly. So I never knew the taste of being in government until 2015 when we won an election, and I knew how exhilarated it was, how happy I was, deeply happy when we won an election in 2015. And I could go back to Kano and I could just leave and I say, and finally we've got somebody that we liked. And now, if I had lost 2015, God knows when I lost 2007 against the late Umaru Musa Yar'Adua, I was on my way to Gombe, and I got a phone call that the election was called, and and I knew people were still in line at that time. It was a crazy time. People were still in line. Elections were not concluded, and then the results were announced. And I remember I was driving to Gombe, and somebody called me and said, hey, the election was called and you guys have lost, and Buhari has lost. And I knew I had to park for almost 45 minutes. I was crying profusely.
To recover,
because I couldn't just keep on driving.
But you did,
you
recovered.
But I recovered. So what I'm saying is that we have to understand that the raw feelings are inside. But now it is the responsibility of the leaders and people who have either won or lost, political leaders religious leaders, traditional leaders, all leaders of different sects of the society, to say that now this was an election, it has been won, it has been lost, so to speak. We don't believe in losing in politics, but you could say that for the benefit of the people who believe they have lost. Because I believe every activity, whether win or lose, in elections is a lesson that has been learned, and then you pick up and you meet up in the next phase. Whether won or lost, that there has been some sort of a healing begins, a reconciliation begins, because we need a nation to govern. And I think that is what Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu has been talking about. All the letters or statements that he has made since he has won is about reconciliation. And then we need to talk to our supporters as well, as much as anybody who is speaking on behalf of us or against us, on behalf of the other people, that there must be a nation. The way some of the individuals I've seen on TV speak, who are supposed to, lead this country, so to speak, and the way they have the fire and brimstone that comes out of their mouth, that there will be no this when this is not done, you don't do that. Because there must be a country for you to govern, or there must be a country for you to even be an opposition in, to start with, so that you can build, because both sides are needed, for the build of this country.
Yeah, let me just interject before we take a short break, and of course look at the other leg of conversation today. I just like to ask you, and it's interesting, you are the SSA to the President on Special Intervention, and you've talked about reconciliation as one of those interventions, but reconciliation should go beyond words. This reconciliation should be actionable. We could use, or maybe I should ask, how can we use institutions, to action this reconciliation, so that those, that feel aggrieved are also part, of this
but you see,
process building.
But it starts with words. That's where it all starts from. Because I could come here and say one thing to you. I can say hello and sit down. I could say the same hello in a particular manner. You'll be hurt by it. So it starts with words. Let us never underestimate the value and the importance of words, especially from people that people look up to. It is very important. That's how it starts. President John Kennedy of the United States once said that people may forget what you say, but they will never forget how you said it. And at the time you said it. So it starts with words. Leaders it is critical for people who call themselves leaders or aspiring leaders or who speak for leaders, to come out in the public. It is very important for them to begin with the words that will soothe you. That is where it all begins. Then institutions can come in place, to be able to do the needful. I think it is very important that we begin with words, reconciliatory words. We have to speak to people in a manner that, first of all, I recognize that they are citizens, that they have the right to be hurt or happy if a particular activity has happened. But you have to do it within decorum. I don't have to do it to the detriment of, it's not a zero-sum game. That has to be repeated at every juncture for us to be able to move forward. I think it is really important that we do that.
All right, Barrister Ismail Ahmed and the other guys, thank you very much for the comments that you have made. I believe that for communication scholars and other researchers, the 2023 elections will provide a trove of ideas for them to take off from in terms of looking into strategic public communication and what needs to be done. Because one of the things that got savaged in the course of the 2023 elections was public communication, which is what you guys have just been talking about in the latter part of our conversation. It's Good Morning Nigeria. We're live on NTA's network service. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll continue with the conversation. You're welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Of course, we're discussing managing the fallout post-election, as well as the economic agenda for the incoming administration, effective 29th of May. Let's take advantage of the presence of Ismail Ahmed. I like the fact that you recall that for 16 years you were in the opposition, and then the exhilaration you felt in 2015 when you won. Yes, this will be a transition from one party to another. It's a different ball game, I imagine, if it's a transition from one party, as it happened in 2015, to another party. But regardless, the view from the outside, it's always different once you get into the driver's seat. What is it that, in your opinion, having been an insider, the new president is likely to encounter when he gets into office, in terms of just the broad parameters or the broad issues that he needs to confront as leader?
Well, I think he's not going to be surprised with what he's going to see, because he is used to government. Because he was he governed one of the most complex and dynamic states in the country, which is Lagos, for 8 years. Even though he has been out of, so to speak, political office power since 2007, I think what surprised me about being in government may not necessarily surprise him. Because when we got into government in 2015 through to 2019, the first thing I began to realize about government is that it is far more limiting than we thought. The limitations that people in government have, or government has in its generality, you don't see it from outside, because we used to believe that government can just do whatever it wants.
Yeah.
Especially if you're in the presidency, you can do whatever you want. But that's not the case. And then you begin to see problems. And I used to say, there's a funny saying that I used to tell my friends that, being president of this country is majorly about managing interests. It's the ability of anyone who sits in that office to manage different interests of different people in this country. It's far more important to the life of this country and to the health of the country, ultimately, than project management and project initiation and project completion. Because at the end of the day, especially in the last 1.5 years of any government or any presidency, what people remember most is really emotional. It's how you make them feel, not the number of roads you have built or not the number of bridges you have built. So I think the president-elect would come into an office, and like I said, I'm sure he has been receiving briefings now, state briefings, so he's aware of what's going on. He has a lot of people who are friends of his, or all of us who are in government already, so he has an idea what he's coming into. He has a fantastic relationship with the outgoing president, so I'm sure he has an idea. But generally speaking, for the benefit of audience, I think we have, from 2020 to now, we know that we have had a harsh reality of a global economic meltdown that has beaten into a lot of our resources. We know that we have tried to diversify the economy. We have had problems with cash crunch. We have had a lot of issues that have debilitated our economic growth, even though we have done far better than our peers in Africa. And I think for the ambitious nature of which we need to bring this country out of the doldrums. And I used to give this example, and I'm just talking about economics, just an example. Brazil has roughly the same size in terms of population like Nigeria, probably 250 to 300 million people. The last Brazil budget that I have seen, the federal government budget, not the federation budget of Brazil, was $650 billion US. $650 billion US for the federal government, not federation budget. That is, it does not take into cognizance the other subnational parts of Brazil. The same Nigeria, the same year, Nigerian federation budget, that is federal government, state and local government put together, was less than $100 billion, with roughly the same population, roughly the same size in terms of country and in terms of, you could say economy. So, we do not even have enough funds to fund our priorities. Because, for example, now if you are going to do a rough estimate, almost all the presidential candidates during the campaign said they were going to increase the number of police officers because we had far less than we need. For example, we needed to increase 500,000 police officers. If you take into cognizance how much you need to train and equip and fund every police officer. If you're increasing 500,000, you need at least $10 billion for 2 years. If you translate that to Naira, how much does that cost? If you take Kebbi State, for example, the Kebbi State governor once gave me an example, and he said that the average international rate to train a pupil in primary school is $300 per annum. That is the least. Places like Finland and the Scandinavian countries go as high as up to $5,000. The United States average about $2,000. China about $1,000. But the minimum you should get is about $300 a child per annum. He said if you take the whole of Kebbi State budget and put it into education, it will not relate to $300 per child in Kebbi State, for example. So the question and the challenge the president-elect is going to face is how to get the funds to even fund our priorities is number one. And I'm sure because he is economically attuned, he's well aware of it. We've discussed this during the campaign season. He's willing to go, but he understands those are challenges, and those are some of the things that he's going to face when he becomes president.
One of those things we gather is probably in the tax, in the way he drives the tax administration, system. We've been told that part of the agenda is to, of course, make the wealthy, pay more taxes. Of course, which we know what it is at the moment. A lot of wealthy, Nigerians and even institutions do not pay their taxes. And so, Ayo, how much do you think tax drive, probably?
Yeah, from the manifesto, fortunately I had to go through it yesterday because I was supposed to talk about economy somewhere. I know clearly there is no plan to increase taxes, but there is a plan to widen the tax net. Like you rightly said, so many people don't pay their taxes. I don't want to just limit it to wealthy people. So you need to bring everyone into the tax system so that you can take tax. But we're not going to limit it to tax. If you follow his trajectory, he's been talking clearly about gas. And many people are not seeing what he's saying. Fortunately, I was able to see the bit. You notice that Russia is the largest supplier of gas to Europe. And the president-elect has said, I want to compete with Russia. And I think it's a good idea because you're going to earn a lot of money from there. Like Ismail said, and it is the truth, our biggest problem in Nigeria today is funding. We have a lot of priority projects. Like I was talking about yesterday, we're supposed to make at the least $150 million every year for the next 10 years to bridge our infrastructural gap. We're not even making a tenth of that yet. So clearly, his biggest challenge is funding. But I think it's not going to be in terms of increasing taxes. It's going to be in terms of increasing the tax net. A lot of people, from what I understand, we have less than 10 to 15 percentage of people who are supposed to be paying tax who are currently paying. So if you're able to increase that percent to at least 70, 80%, then it gives you more leverage to get more money. And then if you're able to tap better into the gas that he's been thinking about and talking about, I think that will help us. And then, yeah, the administration that is going out has been talking clearly and has worked a lot in terms of diversification, but we still have a lot to do. And that is to say, our agricultural system that we've been using as diversification, we need to increase it and add value to it. We cannot be exporting raw materials in terms of exporting raw agricultural products instead of adding value and actually making the whole money from here. So those are areas that we need to look into.
You just talked about gas, and my mind quickly, started running wild. And I know that that sector, is probably one of the most mystified. Different, yes,
Well, the Buhari administration has tried to demystify it.
We know that even the gas conversion program. We don't know what is happening to that.
The president-elect is somebody who worked in that
other
sector.
Strategy?
No, he worked in that sector before. I'm sure you know he was a top executive in Mobi Exim before he left. So I believe he understands that sector better. And like you say, it's mystified.
And the dynamics.
We have to demystify it completely. We saw the way Aramco did their own. We saw the way Brazil did their own. we need to get to that point where we're able to demystify it. A lot of mysteries are still around, the NNPC, the LNG. All those things need to be demystified, because clearly the biggest challenge that Nigeria has economically today is funding. And if we must get the funds to come in, then we have to open up that space, remove the mystery around it, and make it more accountable and transparent.
Is the issue that confronts us as a country really one of access to funding, or identification of the critical sector or ideas that could then lead us to where to get the funds and then create multiplier effects? I'm asking this advisedly, Ismail. Yes, the workaday issues are out there, and happily before the elections, amongst the various interactions we had with groups representing the various political parties, the APC professionals, group of professionals, was also here with us. I remember Issa Yuguda, former governor of Bauchi State. He led that conversation, and BK Ogala, joined us via Zoom. Are we going to take this as a critical item to try to re-industrialize? I say this advisedly, re-industrialize. Post-SAP, Nigeria became de-industrialized. And then we drifted into the financial ends of things and started looking at more issues. But we're all sitting here. We all have our car or cars, right? And those cars run on wheels. And those wheels are made of tires. How many tire manufacturing companies do we have in Nigeria today? There was a time, Beret Battery in Kaduna, Beret Battery at Isolo in Lagos. They were all functioning. Exactly. So how many battery manufacturers are in Nigeria today? We all have our phones. They run on batteries. How many battery manufacturers are here? We talk about steel. So is it because when we say funding, yes, it's fine. I mean, that's the financial end of things. But the real job creators, the real job absorbers, when you reindustrialize, we also be able to create opportunities for value addition for your agricultural produce. Ismail, very quickly.
Well, I try to make sure that I don't know much about reindustrialization, like you would want to call it. But what I always tell myself, right, is that in a global competition, the world has shrunk. You are competing globally. While some people have industrialized and have moved on to services, you are trying to catch up with industrialization. By that time they have gone far. And the world is not moving in one pace. It's not waiting for one country to catch up, when other countries have moved on 20, 30, 40 years ahead of that. So we have to juggle so many balls at the same time. That's the honest truth. What used to be, you gave an example of phones. And when I came here, you're talking about social media. I used to know, because I'm 43, I used to know that, when we grew up in our teenage years during the military juntas, that there's always one single form of information in the country, which is NTA, for example. Everybody converges at 9 p.m. to listen to NTA news. I know that my dad, like clockwork, listens to his NTA news at 9 p.m. that whatever we want to tell him about school, we have to go there and wait for him. At 9:45, he finishes before he walks into his bedroom. That's when we speak to him, whether or not the news was good or bad. If the news was not too good, we try to stay away. If it was good, that's when we speak to our dad. And I know that was the case. But now everybody seems to be a journalist. So what I'm saying is that the world has moved on. We cannot say that we are going to begin to say we have to reindustrialize and start making batteries today or tomorrow.
It's a process.
It's a process. So you have to juggle too many balls at the same time. So the question is, what is it? We need funding. It's clear. How do we now, like you said, bring out ideas to be able to make sure that we bring out funding to invest in critical sectors that will lead to, whether you call it industrialization, service and financial services, whatever it is that gets our people jobs and gets us money and to be able to fund people and to be able to take care of those who cannot take care of themselves, because ultimately, that is the essence of government.
Barrister Ahmed, we need money to even industrialize.
Exactly.
No, that's the point, but you have to have a goal. That's the goal.
So let's just get this last input from Gbolahan in Lagos. Gbolahan, just we're sorry if you can in 60 seconds. Also, give us your thoughts on what you think is the major issue ahead of the president-elect.
Okay. I will take my position from the manifesto of the party, and the manifesto seems to have addressed most of these issues. The first segment of that manifesto spoke about fiscal issues, which is where all the taxes, revenues, import substitution, and the rest of them, that is where they are. Then it went on to monitoring. In the monitoring, you start talking about things like exchange rate management, exchange issues. You talk of inflation management. You talk of debt. Should we continue to borrow, in foreign exchanges and all that? That's what it's right. Then the third part was the National Industrial Plan, which spoke to what you were speaking about just a few minutes ago. I happen to have worked with the lead issuing house for the Dunlop offer in 2016, I believe. Yeah, 2016, well, that was when it was. And after Dunlop has raised money, there was a change in policy. The rest is history. We may not have time to talk about it now. Then the last part is housing. You see, implementing this manifesto alone could literally transform this nation from where we are to where we need to be. Beyond the issue of managing interests, like Ismail has said, which is very important. If you can't manage interest, in fact, you're not going to stay there long. You're not going to be able to achieve anything. But beyond that, it's also the vision. So a vision is what says, when I came, this is what I met in this particular sector. But when I am leaving, this is what I would like to see. And
all right. I'm sorry, Gbolahan Olojede, public policy analyst speaking from our Lagos Network Center. We'd like to appreciate your contributions to Good Morning Nigeria today. Thank you very much, and do have a pleasant day. Also, let's appreciate Ayobami Oyalowo, who is a development economist. Always a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you,
and
Kingsley.
Barrister Ishmael Ahmed, who is the Secretary, Policy and Research Strategy of the APC PCC, and also the SSA to President on Special Intervention. We'd like to appreciate your interventions.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
That's it for us on Good Morning Nigeria today. We thank you for being with us. Tomorrow is another day, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. Look after yourselves. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And don't forget to join us in our campaign against rape and rapists. From all of us here, GMN Crew, I am Claire Agilabu Abdulrazak. Have a great day.